History repeating. Welcome back to History Repeating and our first episode with the legendary Gwen Dickey, the lead singer of Royce and an amazing solo artist. Gwen grew up in Mississippi with a musical family. Her father had his own gospel group, but Gwen didn't make it big until she ended up in LA, signed by the late, great Norman Whitfield.
Well, my first experience with music would have been my late father, who was, well, in my early years, he had his own gospel group. And then later on in life, as I grew up and got a bit older, my father became a minister. So I sung in the high school choir and in church. But I used to always, when my father and his group would rehearse at our house, I would always stand in the middle of them. I remember as a little girl standing there. My mother would say, shaking my booty. But they were singing gospel songs and I was dancing. So that's my early years of singing with my father and his gospel group.
And where did you grow up?
I grew up in Biloxi, Mississippi.
So, how did you how did you make your way from growing up there to performing in Los Angeles?
Darling,
I mean, not Los.
that's a question. If I could really answer it, only thing I would say it was the grace of God guiding me where He wanted me to be because I have no idea. I started off in Miami once I graduated from high school in Biloxi, Mississippi. Um, I met a lady by the name of Betty Wright, who was a big singer at the time. I started hanging out with her, traveling with her, doing shows. The next thing I know, I was in a group that she uh, had taken me to the studio where she worked, and they put me in the group. There were three of us. Then we were in a tribute band. We traveled around all over Miami. We even opened for James Brown once as young girls. The next thing I know, I was singing in a club in Fort Lauderdale that was owned at that time by the football great Joe Namath. Uh, I was spotted by a guy named Joe Harris, who was already in a famous group called the Undisputed Truth. He had a girl in his group, but she had just recently got married. This was going to be her last tour. And when he got back to LA, they were going to start auditioning to find a girl to replace her. But when he saw me on stage, he goes, "That's her. That's the girl I want to replace. Her name was B. That's the girl I want to replace B." And he went back to LA and he told his producer, the late great Norman Whitfield, who's just been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a brilliant songwriter and producer. I was flown to LA. The next thing I know, I was being chased by photographers because we recorded Car Wash. He put me in a band. At the time, the band was called Total Concept Unlimited. Once Norman Whitfield saw me, he put me in the group, not in Joe's group, which he wasn't happy about. I became the lead singer of the group Royce, and now I get to talk to you.
Gwen worked with Norman Whitfield during her time with Royce in the 70s, and at this point, Norman was already a legend, having written and produced countless hits, including I Heard It Through the Grapevine and Ball of Confusion. But growing up in Mississippi, Gwen had no idea who Norman was or why he was so important. She knew his music, but eventually she realized just how important Norman was both to her and to the industry as a whole.
Well, to be honest with you, uh, I grew up in, as I said, I grew up in Biloxi, Mississippi. Excuse me, and then I went to Miami. I mean, I never heard of Norman Whitfield. I'd heard of songs like, Papa was Rolling Stone, Cloud Nine, songs that he had written and were massive hits. And I'd heard those songs, but I didn't know who Norman Whitfield was. So when I got off the plane and I was taken to Norman Whitfield's house, and the guys in the band who were at that time called Total Concept Unlimited, to them, Norman Whitfield was next to God. But I mean, he didn't mean anything to me because I never heard of him. So everybody was excited. They go, "Oh, you're going to meet Norman Whitfield?" And I went, "Yeah, okay." So I'm saying, "Who's Norman Whitfield?" And this figure comes up to me and he goes, "I'm Norman Whitfield." I went, "Oh, hi, Norman." And it wasn't until I had been in LA, I'd say a couple of months before I even grasped who this man was. I saw in his house he had all these gold discs, and they had some other kind of things that looked like Grammys that he had all over his wall. I mean, they were all over his house. And I said to him one day, I said, "Why are all your records gold and platinum? And why do you have them framed and hanging on the wall?" The man literally fell on the floor with laughter. He said, "My God, you are so country." And I said, "Well, yeah, I'm country, but why? How can you even play them?" He goes, "You don't play them. These are what you are awarded for your achievements when you sell millions of records." He said, "And you're going to have these hanging in your house one day." And I went, "Really?" I mean, he literally dropped to the floor, and he just couldn't stop laughing. Because I've never seen those things before. I mean, the guys had, because they grew up in LA and they had been hanging around with Norman Whitfield for months. But to me, I thought they were records that you play, and I couldn't understand why they had them framed and hanging on the wall. And now I have my own.
It's hard to believe, but Gwen originally didn't want to be a singer. She wanted to be a flight attendant, but life took her down a different path, and she's certainly happy that it did.
To be honest with you, when I was singing with the group in Miami, I never wanted to be a singer. It was never in my thought pattern ever. I wanted to be a flight attendant so I could travel the world for free. That was my whole thing. But now that I've traveled the world for free and I see what flight attendants go through, I said God knew that that wasn't a job for me, because I would probably end up in jail. Stop ringing that bell. I've given you some eyes. Don't ask me. So it was best that he took me in another direction. But I never wanted to be a singer. And after, as I said, after I had been in LA for a couple of months, the only thing that I was thinking, which I did say to Norman Whitfield one day, I said to him, "I want to go back to Miami because I need to get back to my boyfriend." And he said to me, "The next time you go to Miami, people are going to be running down the street calling your name." And I'm looking at him, I'm like, "This guy is crazy. What is he talking about?" But lo and behold, the next time I went to Miami, I mean, Car Wash was a massive hit around the world, and people were running behind our bus calling my name.
The first single by Royce was the song Car Wash, which was in the Richard Pryor film of the same name. Car Wash became a massive success, reaching #1 on the Hot 100 and selling millions of copies. But when Gwen first heard Norman's idea for the song, she wasn't that impressed by it. Not many hit songs are written about a car wash.
Well, when we first heard it on the radio, we were running around Norman's house like little kids that got everything that we asked Santa for. We were so excited. So it was quite exciting. But I didn't really grasp, what it meant to have this record. I mean, the guys did. And it's not that I was quite thick. It's just that, as I said, I grew up in Biloxi, Mississippi. All this was new to me. So I'm having to take in all these things that's happening to me. But, when you sell out Madison Square Garden in 10 minutes, that is quite a feat.
When you heard the song, did you think, this is going to be one of those songs that is going to last for, I mean, that'd be hard to know, but did you think that it was going to be just a massive hit?
Well, let me tell you, the first time I heard the song, excuse me, Norman was playing basketball with some of the guys in front of his house, because he had this enormous house, of course, and there was a basketball court there. And his niece and I were sitting on this brick wall watching them play basketball. So I think one of the guys elbowed him, and he was such a baby. He went in his house, and he was in there for quite some time. And then he came out because we had had Kentucky Fried Chicken for lunch before they started playing basketball. So he comes out with this greasy Kentucky Fried Chicken bag, and he's holding this little tiny pencil. And he comes and he sits between us, and he said, "I'm going to teach you this song I just wrote." And I went, "Okay." So he started singing, "You might not ever get rich." Of course, he couldn't sing. "Working at the car wash." So his niece and I lean over, we're looking at each other. I'm like, "Are you serious? You want me to sing a song about a car wash?" And he was like, he got upset. He's like, "Yeah, this song is gonna make you rich and famous." I said, "You want me to sing a song about a car wash?" And he said, "Yeah, come in the house, let me teach it to you." And I'm sort of walking in slow motion. I'm going, I can't believe this man wants me to sing a song about car wash. So That's how the song came about.
Most groups feel a bit of pressure going in to record a follow-up album to a successful debut, but that wasn't the case for Rolls-Royce. They actually had their second album, In Full Bloom, finished before the Car Wash soundtrack, and it includes their classic hit, Wishing on a Star, which has more than a few notable covers. And with that song, it kind of it launched the career, but did you guys kind of have any like feeling of pressure then after that, having such a big hit with your first song to follow that up?
No, we didn't even think about it. We were just excited, we were on doing all these massive shows and you know, as I said, Car Wash was triple platinum around the world. So we were just excited about that. But we had already recorded our second album, which was In Full Bloom. We had already recorded that album and was about to release it when the studio came to Norman and wanted him to do the soundtrack. And he wanted to use us, who were unknown. Nobody had ever heard of us. We never had any records. And they said, no, we want you to use somebody like Gladys Knight of the Temptations. He said, well, if I do the soundtrack, I'm using this group. So you take it or leave it. So eventually he won the argument. And that's how we came to do the soundtrack. But we already had an album ready to be released. So the next hit for us was Wishing on a Star because that was on the album that we had already recorded.
And Wishing on a Star, that's my personal favorite of the songs. And it's
Thank you.
you just do such a good job. I still can't believe that you didn't want to go into music with a voice like that.
Well, I never really thought of myself as a singer, to be honest. And the only reason I ended up in the choir in high school is because I got in trouble in gymnastics. And because I grew up in a small town and I had to go to the principal's office, and he takes this paper out, he said, I'm going to expel you for a week and you have to go home and come back with this paper signed by your parents. Well, let me tell you, if you met my late mother, you would rather walk through fire than go home and tell her you've been put out of school for a week. My father, you can get around. My mother, no, you'd walk through fire before you go home. You talk about walking home in slow motion. So the principal said, I know you're a good kid. He said, so here's the deal. You can go in the choir, or I can sign this letter and you can take it home, stay home for a week, and come back with it signed by your parents. I said, where's the choir room? So I dashed to the choir room, and lo and behold, my neighbor who lived across the street from my family home was the choir director. So I'm like, oh, I'm in here. He's gonna, I can get away with murder here. Lo and behold, he was tougher on me than anybody in the whole class. But that's how it came about me singing publicly because I had to go to, well, I chose to go to the choir, then go home and tell my mother that I'd been put out of school for a week.
And then Wishing on a Star then became it wasn't as successful in the United States as Car Wash, but it's certainly, I think, even more successful in Europe.
Yeah, well, after Car Wash, as I said, Wishing on a Star was our next big hit in Europe. And then promoters started booking us, and that's how we started doing shows in Europe and
And
throughout the rest of the world.
and then you covered, well, it's your own song, so you can't really cover, but you did a version in 1998 with Jay-Z, if I'm correct.
Yes, under duress. I didn't want to do it. I was living in Paris at the time, and I don't know even know how these people got my number. And this was before he became the superstar mogul that he is today. He was known as an underground artist, but he wanted desperately to be played on the radio. And I don't know if you know anything about London, but at that time, Jay-Z had more chance of going to the moon than having the BBC play his music. So he wanted to do Wishing on a Star, and he wanted me to do it with him. But I said, listen, let somebody else do it. I've done it. It's been a hit. I'm not interested. Stop calling me. And they would call me at 5 o'clock in the morning, 12 o'clock at night, because they wanted me to do this. He wanted me to do this song with him. So I gave in. I did the song with him, and it was a hit for us, and it got him played on radio in London. And at that time, he wasn't as, you know, polished, shall I say. He was a rap artist. He acted like a rap artist, he dressed like a rap artist. And he traveled with a lot of guys at that time. This was before he married the beautiful and talented Beyonce. And that was not going to go well with the BBC in England. It just wasn't going to happen. And he was determined, which, he was persistent and it worked out well for him.
It definitely did. And Beyonce even covered that song, Wishing on a Star.
Yes. I think it was for when she released her first perfume, she covered, and I don't know why everybody calls me. Madonna covers Love Don't Live Here Anymore, and everybody's calling me. I'm like, why? If she wants to record it, whoever wants to record it, good luck to them. I'm happy that they hear our version and like it enough to want to cover it. Beyonce puts out her first perfume when she does Wishing on a Star, and even radio stations are trying to talk to me. I'm like, why? Leave me alone. Let the lady record it. Let her record it. Because when she recorded it, then people remember me.
Wishing on a Star was not the last mega hit for Royce. Love Don't Live Here Anymore was still to follow. So look out for our next episode with Gwen to find out about this song, her breakup with the band, and her upcoming release. So until next time, this has been History Repeating.